This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. Well, the 2026 midterms are in 75 days. Early voting begins in 65 days. To win control of the House, Democrats need a net gain of 3. To win control of the Senate, a net gain of 4. The trend lines are suggesting a blue wave. Why? Well, the national debt officially hit $40 trillion this week. Trump, in a year and a half, added $4 trillion to our national debt. More on that later on in the show. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, appearing on Fox News Thursday, said, "I don't understand why there's been a massive spike in the cost of oil." And the Fox News host, Jessica Tarloff, said, "Really? Because literally everyone else knows why. Only Donald Trump could pick a Secretary of Treasury who doesn't have a grasp of supply and demand." Meanwhile, no surprise that the Cook Political Report, out now with a report maintaining Democrats have multiple paths for control of the Senate. Texas has now been moved into the toss-up column. More on that later. Texas has broken my heart for the past 15 years. But the Iowa Senate race, now a toss-up. As I keep telling you, if this is in fact a wave election, Maine and North Carolina automatically flip blue, and then Democrats just need 2 more to take the Senate. Much more on this later in the show. Meanwhile, fresh off winning his Florida primary, the odious Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz said the Democratic Socialists of America and Hassan Piker, quote, "can't coexist with me." I've been telling you Jared Moskowitz is a bad guy. Just because he's a Democrat who goes after Trump, don't fall for it. So many liberal Democrats go, "Oh, Jared Moskowitz must be a good..." No, he's bad. He's a bad guy. More on him later, because he's turned out to be absolutely despicable. And if the Democrats don't do well in the midterms, he will be partly responsible for some of the things he said about Democratic candidates. And Hassan Piker, whose life is constantly being threatened by this administration. Well, it turns out data centers are not just toxic for the surrounding community. They're also a health hazard for Republican politicians. The National Republican Senatorial Committee out with a memo this week warning their internal polling indicates one of the top reasons rural Republicans are upset with the party is Donald Trump's uncompromising support for data centers. The public backlash to data centers is reportedly threatening Jon Husted, the Republican senator from Ohio, running neck and neck against former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown. Now, Ohio has a lot of rural districts. That would not be Jon Husted. That's Jon Husted and Sherrod Brown. Ohio has a lot of... Okay, it's all falling apart now. I'm coughing, my allergies. This is the best part, when I just completely lose it. Okay, Ohio Senator Jon Husted is running neck and neck with former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown. Ohio has a lot of rural districts, farmland, And a lot of the farmers, a lot of rural voters don't like being targeted for data centers. I think Ohio has the 5th largest number of data centers in the country. Nobody wants them in their neighborhood, but the Trump administration trumpets data centers as a sign of job growth. The Associated Press quotes Donald Trump as saying, quote, if I were the mayor of a town or the governor of a state and I had a chance to get a big plant in, an AI plant or a data center, I would absolutely want it because the jobs are enormous. They're not really. And the money paid, the taxes paid are just enormous. No, they're a drain on your electricity and water. And they don't create good jobs. They create temporary good construction jobs, but then they're just a toxic waste dump of pollutants and noise. So the number of data centers being built in Ohio skyrocketing, which is why perhaps a new Fox poll, this is Fox, says Democrat Sherrod Brown now leading incumbent Republican Senator Jon Husted by 8 percentage points. And new reporting just in that Republican Senate candidate Mike Rogers in a tight Michigan race against Democrat Dr. Abdul El Sayed, Mike Rogers, Republican, announcing on Thursday he would support a moratorium on data centers. Republican Mike Rogers breaking with the president, saying on Thursday, while I don't support a federal ban, Michigan needs stronger guardrails to protect community control, prevent utility price hikes, protect our water, and stop pay-to-play schemes. You're going to stop pay-to-play schemes? That, in the Trump administration, is treason. So he's called for a 1-year moratorium on new data centers, saying, quote, until we establish a fair, transparent approval process that puts local communities first. After missing for a month, First Lady Melania Trump made her first public appearance in nearly 30 days on Thursday. Melania was at the White House for an event supporting her Fostering the Future initiative. She opened her remarks by saying, quote, I heard you missed me, and everybody laughed. Maggie Haberman of the New York Times now saying Melania is probably upset. One of the reasons we haven't seen Melania is because we keep seeing Trump's assistant, Natalie Harp, Harp's estranged brother, now saying he's getting death threats after telling the Daily Mail his sister has an unhealthy relationship with our president. And new reporting suggests Natalie Harp has been with Trump inside the White House since his return, but it took more than a year for her to get security clearance, something Trump reportedly helped her evade. So, a lot to go over today. I'm going to start with a minor state House race on Tuesday in Pennsylvania's 12th House district. Okay, this is state politics. And I know you're thinking it's boring, but these are the trend lines that should excite you. This is not a race for Congress. This was a special election to fill an empty seat inside the Pennsylvania State House. It was a Republican seat that just flipped blue, and it is part of a much larger narrative that's emerged since Trump won back the White House in November 2024. There's been a backlash that we haven't seen since 2018, the last time Trump had midterms. We're seeing this especially because Pennsylvania is a bellwether state. It is a swing state. One Democrat, one Republican senator. They have one Democratic senator in Pennsylvania, one Republican senator, although some would argue that John Fetterman isn't really a Democrat. Josh Shapiro is the Democratic governor. Democrats barely control the state House of Representatives. Republicans barely control the state Senate. We're talking about state politics. Democrats control the state House of Representatives. Republicans barely control the state Senate. Pennsylvania's Supreme Court right now has a 5-2 Democratic majority. Now, in Pennsylvania, state Supreme Court justices are elected to 10-year terms. It's different in each state. About half the states in this country elect their Supreme Court. The other half sort of mimic the federal government, where the state Supreme Court is appointed, nominated, and then confirmed by the state legislative branch. So you got a split state here. This is a leading indicator of where things are heading. Pennsylvania sends 17 members to the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., 7 Democrats, 10 Republicans. It's kind of like Wisconsin, which we talked about last week. It can go either way. And in wave elections, it does. On Tuesday, this is important, on Tuesday, Democrats flipped Pennsylvania's 12th House district in a special election. This wasn't a primary. This was a special election to fill a Republican seat. Republican Tom Timko lost to Democrat Brandon Dukes by only 88 votes. 88 votes out of 16,000 cast. 88 votes was the margin of victory. But what does that tell you? It tells us that Pennsylvania remains a toss-up, but a win is a win. And once again, we're seeing another massive swing away from Donald Trump since his 2024 victory, where he won Pennsylvania 12 by 18 percentage points, okay? Within fewer than 2 years, this district swung 19 percentage points away from the Republican Party. So yeah, 88 votes seems like nothing, but that's a 19-point swing since November of 2024. That is what makes it earth-shattering, absolutely, positively earth-shattering. Last year, in another special election, Pennsylvania, James Malone, Democrat, barely, but he did. He flipped a Republican state Senate seat blue in Lancaster County, where Trump had beaten Harris by 15 points. Malone won another razor-thin election. A win is a win. He flipped it blue. All part of this much larger narrative taking shape, scaring the hell out of Republicans in the lead up to November 3rd. There have been close to 200 special elections since Trump won in 2024. And when you look at state house races, it spells nothing but disaster for Republicans. Now, again, these are races for state Senate or the state House of Representatives, not the federal government. All politics is local, as Tip O'Neill famously said. Now, out of the 200 special elections since November of 2024, only 31 seats flipped, either from red to blue or blue to red. Would you like to guess how many seats, either in the state Senate or a state House of Representatives, how many out of the 31 seats that flipped, how many were Democratic candidates flipping a red seat blue? What do you think? All 31. all 31 seats, Republicans have failed to flip a single state legislative seat from blue to red since November of 2024, when Donald Trump won. This is very reminiscent of what we saw in the lead up to Trump's midterms in 2018, where the House of Representatives eventually flipped red after Republicans lost 40 seats. Nancy Pelosi became Speaker again. Now, a word of caution. We're seeing what looks like now a repeat of 2018, but a word of caution. Republicans not only kept control of the Senate that year, but they also picked up 2 Senate seats. So it was not a complete repudiation of Donald Trump in 2018. So don't let anyone, including me, get you overexcited. Because despite the trend lines, despite the pollings, this remains a difficult midterm for Democrats, especially since Trump will only accept the results if he wins, if the Democrats win. Ralph Nader, on his radio show next week, which you can download as a podcast, did an entire episode on how if Democrats win, then the real battle starts on November 4th, the day after the midterms. Trump will not accept the results if he loses either the House, the Senate, or both. Trump cannot accept the results. Only one way for Trump to accept the results, and that is, and I can't stress this enough, unless it's a massive blue tsunami. Register to vote. Vote. If you're in Jared Moskowitz's district, vote for him. He's detestable and despicable. Vote for him anyway. Vote for Josh Gottheimer anyway. I cannot stress this enough. Americans turning out in massive numbers to protest Donald Trump and his Republicans, if you turn out to protest by voting for Democrats on November 3rd in record numbers, that makes it impossible for Trump to do anything but accept the results. But a close midterms, where Democrats gain control of either the Senate, the House, or both, but by razor-thin margins, Trump will not accept the results. And I hate to say this, because I believe in the First Amendment and our right to protest, but Americans turning out in record numbers to protest Trump's refusal to accept election results, that will make it even easier for Republicans not to cede control. Because why? You know why. It's always better to take to the ballot box before an election than it is to take to the streets after the election. Protests, massive protests, are always an invitation for agent provocateurs and mischief. So, if he doesn't accept the results, I'm going to be out there protesting, but it's a lot easier if we win the midterms by a landslide. In Maine, Planned Parenthood just dumped close to $500 million to help defeat incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins. Alaska seems to be flippable for the time being. This is kind of interesting what happened on Tuesday. Former Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola on Tuesday officially became her party's nominee to take on two-term incumbent Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. Now, the polling shows her with a slight lead of about 2%. I'm going to go into the weeds here and tell you something that will give you hope. I hope it gives you hope. Alaska does what are called nonpartisan jungle primaries. That means the top 4 vote getters for Senate make it to the ballot in November. That's what a jungle primary, for the most part, is. It doesn't matter which party, the top 4 make it to the ballot in November. You can have 2 Democrats or 2 Republicans running against each other. We kind of have that in Los Angeles. Karen Bass, the mayor, is running against a Democratic Socialist. I think she might be a Democrat as well as a Democratic Socialist. Okay. The results from Tuesday's Alaska primaries, jungle primaries, tell us a pretty important story. And it's not a story that ends well for Republican Senator Dan Sullivan, who on Tuesday got 43% of the vote compared to Democrat Mary Peltola, who got 48%. She beat Dan Sullivan by 5 percentage points. Now, there was a wider field, but it's telling us why so many Democrats believe she can win this. In the lead up to Tuesday's Alaska primary, former Congresswoman, Democrat Mary Peltola, rejected an endorsement from Vice President Harris. Harris's Political Action Committee sent out an email in the lead up to Tuesday's primary urging voters in Alaska to do what? You guessed it. Urging Alaskan Democrats to donate to Harris's super PAC. The email provided a link that allowed donors to automatically split their donation between Mary Peltola and Vice President Harris. Harris is not a candidate for anything. So why would you donate to her super PAC, especially when Mary Peltola is in a tight race that could determine control of the Senate? Well, I don't want to belabor this, but there is a massive schism inside the Democratic Party. Unlike anything we've ever seen before, this is worse than 2020 when Bernie almost became the nominee. See, Bernie was an outlier. We're seeing Democratic Socialists of America taking over the Democratic Party in numbers we've never seen before. We've never seen socialists like this. Ron Dellums of Berkeley and Oakland flirted with socialism. Bernie was a socialist who caucused with the Democrats, but he was never a member of the Democratic Socialists. I mean, you'd have to go back to World War I, Eugene Debs, Lafayette, to see self-proclaimed socialists en masse getting elected. So why is there this crack up inside the Democratic Party, which I happen to think is a good thing? I think this is how you win elections. I'm going to get to Jared Moskowitz in a second. But you win elections by fighting it out and then coming together. Now, why is there such a preponderance of DSA candidates winning? Because of the past 40 years inside the Democratic Party. Now, there has been misreporting about the Harris campaign. Some of it, if not most, rooted in racism and misogyny. But I want to address this because it involves Alaska. Here's the truth, because Mary Peltola rejected Harris's endorsement. She said, I don't want your endorsement. When that email went, that fundraising email using Mary Peltola's name got sent out, where Harris is asking you to split your donation with Mary Peltola and Harris, who's not a candidate. What's that about? This is one of the reasons the Democratic Party is having its little crack up, which is a good thing. So here's the truth, because a lot of people have misreported what happened after the Harris campaign lost. It is true that $1 billion was raised to get Harris elected in 2024. It is true that the Harris campaign ended the election about $20 million in debt. That is true. It is also true that that debt was transferred to the Democratic National Committee, but it didn't leave the Democratic Party in debt. That's the misreporting. The truth is, two organizations, the Democratic National Committee and the Harris 2024 Presidential Campaign Committee, together raised $1 billion to get her elected president. Together, they spent, I happen to believe, wasted $1 billion. It was a grotesque money grab on the scale of the Trump administration. The consultants looted the Harris campaign, looted the Democratic National Committee. Democratic consultants treat the Democratic Party the same way Trump officials treat the federal Treasury. There is absolutely no difference between the self-dealing inside the Trump administration and the self-dealing inside the Democratic Party. The difference is Trump and his crowd steal from the taxpayers. Democrats steal from Americans stupid enough to donate to the Democratic Party. That's the truth. All the donations to the Republican Party when Trump was running or while go to him. No consultants are getting rich off Trump's presidential campaign. Only Trump. The Democrats spread the wealth with your donations, but not to the people who need it, to the consultants. Don't ever donate to the Democratic Party. Never donate to the Democratic Party. You donate directly to Bernie Sanders, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Mamdani, Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey. You donate to the Democratic candidate, not the party or the dark money super PACs. So yes, the truth is Democrats spent $1 billion on getting Harris elected. The truth is, after that election, the Democratic National Committee had $22.1 million in cash on hand. She didn't bankrupt the Democratic Party, which is been reported by the racists and misogynists. The Harris campaign had about a $20.5 million debt. They couldn't pay their bills after the presidential election. David Plouffe, I'm not going to go over the money that was wasted. I'm not going to go over it. I've spent too much time, and it upsets people when I go over what they spent money on. Okay. So on November 4th, whenever the presidential election was over, Harris, her campaign had $20.5 million in unpaid bills. It was Harris's campaign that ended up $20.5 million in debt, and the Democratic National Committee decided to pay off that debt for her because these were unpaid bills to vendors. And you don't want to piss off the vendors. You don't want to get a reputation for not paying your bills because then you sound like Donald Trump. You look like Donald Trump. So they paid all the vendors. The consultants all got money off the top. They get paid. It's the vendors, the people who do the real work. So nobody is quite sure how or if Harris is ever paying the Democratic National Committee back for this bailout. And because of that, Harris, after the election, found her campaign committee, not the Democratic National Committee, but the Harris Campaign Committee, in debt and vilified. And I think rightfully so. The Democratic National Committee made a deal with her campaign and said, we will assume your $20.5 million debt and you can wipe your books clean. In return, Harris and one of her, I'm getting really angry, and I shouldn't. Never give money to the Democratic Party. You give it to Bernie, AOC, Rashida Tlaib. You give it to the candidates. So the Democratic committee made a deal with Harris and said, we'll pay your $20.5 million in unpaid bills, and then in return, you or one of your super PACs will pay us back. And her super PAC immediately began asking for money. You all get emails from her super PAC, from Harris, saying, give me money. And after the election in early 2025, she owed the DNC about $20.5 million. Her super PAC cut a check to the DNC for $7 million to help pay. That's about 1/3 of what her campaign owed the DNC. Okay. But the DNC used that money immediately to purchase her email list for $6.5 million. So her email, she made $6.5 million selling her email list to the Democratic National Committee. You know, I asked for your emails so I know who you are and I can reach you if I have to when they finally shut the show down. But I would never sell your emails. But this is what they do. They sell your information. And after getting that $6.5 million, that's how it works. She owed her campaign, David Plouffe, all those geniuses, owed the Democrats about $21 million. She gives them $7 million. They return the money by buying her email list. And nobody will explain to me how, when, or if Harris will ever pay back the $20 million to the Democratic National Committee. We do know she and Doug Emhoff, her husband, purchased a home in Malibu for, $8 million this year. So, seems to me, and a lot of Democrats, a lot of Democratic Socialists of America who sense the urgency of the moment and want Democrats to win, it seems to me Harris should clarify in that email to Mary Peltola supporters in Alaska. Harris should clarify, where would that donation to Harris's super PAC end up? What am I paying for? What am I paying for when you, in the heat of an important election that could be the determining factor on which party controls the Senate, you're asking Alaska voters to split their donation between Mary Peltola and you? Why should anyone in the middle of a tight Senate race in Alaska split the money with Harris? What's in it for Alaska voters? What's in it for any voters? Is it going to fund Harris's attempts to help Democrats win the midterms? Or is it to help Harris pay back the $20 million in change she owes the Democratic Party? Or is it to fund Harris running again in 2028? Yes, this is why the Democratic Socialists of America are doing so well. Again, I would vote for Harris. I'm a Democrat. This is family squabbling. I don't love her, but you get angriest with the people you consider family. So you vote for Democrats no matter what, even if it's the odious Jared Moskowitz, who I've been telling you is a bad guy for years. Same way I told you Michael Cohen was a bad guy. Now he's interviewing Donald Trump on his radio show, and they're making peace. I'm a Democrat. I vote for Democrats no matter what, but I also hold them accountable, especially when they take my vote and my money. And the reason we don't win the way we should is because in the last election cycle, they raised $1 billion and they can't tell us where it went. I'll tell you where it went. It's been looted by the Democratic consultants. All the old Clinton, Obama, and Biden staffers taking jobs as lobbyists and consultants and pollsters, advisors who run candidates who promise to keep the money in politics. Democrats, just as much to blame as the Republicans. This rise of the DSA didn't materialize out of nothing. It wasn't conjured up by the mischievous Republicans trying to divide us. Well, to her credit, Mary Peltola rejected Harris's endorsement. She said, keep it. She's distancing herself from Harris entirely. She said publicly, we don't want the lower 48 sticking its nose into our business. And right after announcing that, Peltola scored 5% higher in Tuesday's Alaska jungle primary than her Republican opponent, Dan Sullivan, did. So a lot of animosity directed towards Harris is rooted in racism and misogyny. No question. But a lot of that animosity directed at Harris is the same animosity directed at Hillary, Bill, Obama, Biden. So maybe this Alaska Senate seat is flippable. It's interesting. In Arkansas, Republican Senator Tom Cotton, one of the worst politicians, one of the worst senators in D.C., he was expected to cruise to re-election victory. Now, look, I'm not going to give you false hope. He's going to win. But polling shows him vulnerable. A new Hendricks poll of 1,200 likely Arkansas voters shows Cotton losing to his Democratic opponent, Hallie Shoffner, a farmer. Shoffner holds a Master of Public Service from the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service. So I'm going to get angry for about 90 seconds here, and then I'll move on, okay? The University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service. Isn't that sweet? Because Bill Clinton, Arkansas, he was elected governor of Arkansas 5 times. Arkansas loved the Clintons. And Arkansas voted for Bill Clinton twice in the presidential elections, 92 and 96. But for some reason, Hillary lost Arkansas when she ran in 2016. But she's from Arkansas. She's from Arkansas. Bill was elected 5 times as governor of Arkansas. Arkansas should be a no-brainer for Hillary in 2016. What happened? Well, when she ran for Senate while Bill was leaving office, she didn't run for Senate in Arkansas. Hillary Clinton in 2000 ran for Senate in New York State and got elected in New York State. Not a resident of New York State. She got elected. Imagine that, New York sending a liberal Democrat to Washington. You know, if you have to marshal your resources, that's like good on the Clintons. We got a liberal Democrat elected to the Senate from New York. You know how hard that is to do? What she needed to do was go back to Arkansas and run for Senate there. You do the heavy lifting in Arkansas, or you run for governor of Arkansas. Arkansas, I know you're going to find this hard to believe. Arkansas used to send Democrats to Washington. Mark Pryor was a Democrat, Democratic senator. He lasted until 2015. Dale Bumpers, Blanche Lincoln, Mark Pryor's father, David, all Democratic senators. But the Clintons, Yale Law School graduates, they couldn't wait to get out of Arkansas. Bill Clinton ran for president in 92, telling me, I come from a little town called Hope. And his hope was to get the hell out of there and never come back. And this is why we can't win. This is why we don't win. Mike Huckabee's flatulent daughter, Sarah, Republican, is the governor of Arkansas. That could be Chelsea Clinton's job. Instead, she married some hedge fund douchebag in Manhattan, and they're raising their kids to be close to mom and dad up in Chappaqua. Have you been to Chappaqua? You haven't been. They won't let you in. So, the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service. Isn't that great? Bill and Hillary have the Clinton School of Public Service at the University of Arkansas. What part of public service is turning your back on the people who raised you? It should be called the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Self-Service. This is how you end up with Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton, another Ivy League douchebag from Arkansas, Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law, and a combat veteran who has repeatedly called on Trump to use our military to silence peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters. This is who you end up with, Tom Cotton. This is who Arkansas ends up with, because after investing so much time, money, and energy into propping up the Clintons, the state of Arkansas woke up one day and discovered Bill and Hillary are too educated, too refined to remain in Arkansas. Boy, the Clintons, Bill has screwed everyone and everything, including the state of Arkansas. This is why we can't win in the South. So no, Tom Cotton isn't going to lose. He could have lost, but the Clintons abandoned Arkansas. You gotta live in the places where you want to win. Democrats. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for joining me. And yeah, I'm angry and disappointed that there are Democrats who are claiming that the Democratic Socialists of America are being funded by Republicans to divide us, as though there's been no thirst for responsive Democrats who care about voters. This is a real uprising of leftists in the Democratic Party, which should be the party of leftists, not liberals, leftists. All right, I told you I would talk about, please like this episode, please share it, please hit your notification bell. A lot of people are complaining they never know when I have a new episode. I go live Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. If you hit the notification bell, then you always get a notification when I go live, or if I have an episode that I have to do because it's late and breaking. Okay. Well, let's turn to Texas. I promised you I would talk about Texas. We're seeing hope in the Texas Senate race. But again, Texas always disappoints. Scandal-plagued, cash-strapped Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton is running against Democratic state legislator James Talarico, who is taking Christianity back. And it's looking good, but, it's 2.5 months away. I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen. So we're seeing new FEC filings that indicate Ken Paxton is losing at least the money war. He has raised $16 million fewer dollars than Talarico, and a lot of Republican donors are sitting this one out. A lot of Republican politicians are sitting this one out. I don't think Chip Roy has endorsed Paxton yet. I don't think McCall has endorsed Paxton yet. Those are outgoing Republican members of Congress from Texas. I don't think too many Republican members of the House of Representatives have endorsed Paxton. So for the time being, James Talarico owns the airwaves, pummeling Paxton, reminding voters of who exactly Ken Paxton is. Paxton sending out an email about being broke. The subject in the email is, "This is bad, very bad." Some polls show Ken Paxton losing by 4 percentage points. Now, the averages put it at around 1%. But the big internals suggest a huge problem for Ken Paxton. A majority of Texans, this is Republican polling, a majority of Republicans view him as corrupt. You might remember he was impeached by the Texas State House. He ended up getting acquitted in the Texas Senate. One of the state senators who voted to acquit Paxton was his wife, who then sued him for divorce on biblical grounds. There's been a 10-year criminal securities fraud investigation, federal. It resulted in Paxton agreeing to pay $300,000 in restitutions, in other words, to pay back the people he robbed. He has to do community service in return for the state attorney general of Texas not having to admit guilt. Sounds guilty to me. Okay. Am I optimistic in Texas? No. James Talarico was fantastic. But Trump is heading down to Texas, a state he carried by close to 14 points 2 years ago. And while Talarico is coming on strong, I can assure you this race will tighten by November. And Texas Republicans, unfortunately, don't vote the man. They vote the party. If they voted the man, Ted Cruz wouldn't have been reelected in 2024. They vote the party because they know the stakes. So I hope I'm wrong. But anyone who tells you Democrats are about to flip that Senate seat in Texas blue is stringing you along, selling you false hope, like Bill Clinton. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. In Florida, we have terrific news and horrible news. Of course, it's Florida. First, the good news. Florida State Representative Angie Nixon became the one and only card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America to win a Democratic primary for Senate. Now, Dr. Abdul El Sayed in Michigan is the Democratic nominee for Senate, but he's not DSA, and he's not a socialist. But this is good news. This is great news. We finally have a member of the DSA topping a Senate ticket in the Democratic Party. Never happened before. In fact, the socialists used to be Republicans. I think I may be wrong. I think Lafayette may have been a Republican. I think. Let me know in the comments section or contact me over at davidfeldmanshow.com. Angie Nixon defeated Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vindman, the brother of Virginia's Democratic Congressman Eugene Vindman, Eugene Vindman is currently running for re-election. Both men, both Vindmans, twins, are heroes from the first Trump impeachment. They were the whistleblowers who reported the perfect phone call to Zelensky that got Trump impeached, and they were the whistleblowers willing to risk everything for our country. Two great men. Two great men. But here's where you see the massive fissure within the Democratic Party writ large. It was there in Florida for all of us to see. Vindman versus Nixon. Okay? Vindman. On one side, the Vindman side, you have the corporatists, the moderates, the centrists who say, I'm a Democrat and you have my vote. As long as you're against Donald Trump, you were a whistleblower. You've got my vote. The centrists, the moderates, the liberals in the Democratic Party always say there's no time to address income inequality or Medicare for all when our democracy is at stake. We have to vote for Vindman because he can win. By the way, our democracy and our country is always on the chopping block. This is a little scarier, what's going on right now, but the Iraq War, Vietnam, we've never had this kind of threat before. Okay. On the other, so you got the Vindman moderates who pay lip service to the left by saying, of course I want the things you've been asking for the past 50 years. But when the time is right, David will get that puppy. That's what my father used to do to me. Of course I want a puppy. Who doesn't want a puppy? When the time is right, we'll get a puppy. And I never got a puppy. So you got those douchebags. And then on the other side, on the left, you've got the Democratic Socialists, the left, not liberals, the left, who are saying, well, there's never been any time with you guys to address income inequality. And because you ignore the poor and the working class, Trump comes to power and stays there. One side, you have Vindman and the liberals and the corporatists fighting Trump. Yay, they hate Trump. They're like Jared Moskowitz. He hates Trump. He's got to be a good guy. So does Bill Kristol. He hates Trump. He's one of us. No, they're not. And then the other side says, the Nixon side says, Trump is a symptom of the rot inside both parties. Now, here's the truth. Here is the truth. If you talk to the Josh Gottheimers and the Jared Moskowitzes and the problem solvers and the Blue Dog Democrats, they know better than anyone else that Donald Trump is a symptom of the rot inside the Democratic Party. But they don't want to do anything about it because they are the rot. They feed off the rot. They're the maggots, hyenas, and dung beetles who can't survive without the rot. James Carville, David Axelrod, Jamie Harrison, the former head of the DNC, are the rot. The third way Democrats, they're the dung beetles in the Democratic Party who can't survive unless the country is falling apart from greed. But this is good news This is the good news. Nixon beat Vindman. Even better news is Vindman spent more than $16 million to defeat Nixon, who barely cracked $1 million. She barely cracked $1 million. Vindman flooded the airwaves. Nixon, on the other hand, worked her way from the ground up. She got 56% of the vote. Pretty great stuff. She accepted the nomination by targeting the Democratic Party leadership. By name, she accused Chuck Schumer, who will become majority leader, God willing, and Hakeem Jeffries, who will become speaker, God willing. She accused them of caring more about rich donors than voters. What do you think? What do you think? I know what I think. You know what I think. What do you think? Hakeem Jeffries just came out against Medicare for all. He just said, vote for me to become speaker, and I promise you no Medicare for all, as Obamacare is collapsing. Maybe that's how you win elections. Maybe this is what you have to do. What do you think? So, great news coming out of Florida. Angie Nixon, fantastic. Everything I need to see and hear. And now we have our first Democratic socialist on the ballot for the Senate. Yay for us. Okay. Not only that, Vindman endorsed her because that's what you do. The same way Haley Stevens endorsed Dr. El Sayed. That's what you do. There's room for everybody in our party. It's good to have this fight, this argument. It's good for us. And then when you lose, unlike Donald Trump, you accept the results. And the people have spoken. Now, Bernie is not a Democratic socialist. He's a Democratic socialist, but he's not a member, has never been a member of the DSA. Nixon is now backtracking. She was on I think it was NBC News on Thursday, and said, actually, I'm not a socialist. Okay. But you're a member of the DSA. Okay. So 2 days after getting the nomination as a socialist, you're not a socialist. Okay. So that's some of the bad news. The other bad news is she's not going to win. 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 I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But the incumbent, Ashley Moody, appointed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to fill Marco Rubio's seat, is, according to the polls, going to cruise to re-election. Had Vindman won instead of Nixon, right now that seat would have remained likely Republican. But either way, Moody is going to win. Either way. Why? Because Ron DeSantis, the governor, has done too good a job suppressing the black vote in Florida. And he's done, by the way. Ron DeSantis is done. He's term limited out of office. His legacy is making Florida reliably red through gerrymandering and suppressing as well as intimidating the black vote. Florida has one of the largest black populations in America. 17% of Florida is black. They vote for Democrats, by the way. Florida Governor Jeb Bush scrubbed a lot of black voters from the voting rolls during the lead up to the 2000 presidential election. And DeSantis, when he became governor, he went from scrubbing the voter rolls of black people to sandblasting the voter rolls. Very difficult for black people to vote in Florida. You have high-profile examples of black people in Florida arrested for trying to register to vote because they didn't know under state law they were no longer eligible. See, all you need to do is, I'm showing you some pictures here. All you need to do is arrest a handful of black people in Florida attempting to vote, and just enough black people will think, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to risk jail time voting for Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor. In 2018, Florida voters said yes on a proposition. I'm going to tell you something. I've been over this and nobody believed it when I told you this. In 2018, Florida voters said yes to a proposition that would restore voting rights to ex-felons. Passed. You do your time, you can vote. Problem for Republicans is Florida locks up black people at a disproportionate rate, partly for the free labor, and also to keep them from voting once they get out because they vote for Democrats. So restoring voting rights to ex-felons down in Florida, which is what the people wanted, that means allowing too many black people to vote. So Republicans in the State House rejected the will of the people by passing legislation that says, okay, you voted to restore voting rights to ex-felons, but in order for those ex-felons to vote, they have to reimburse the state for time served. Now, I cannot tell you the number of people who wrote to me and said, this isn't true. They couldn't believe that this was true. Are you sitting down? In 1996, Florida passed what they call the pay-to-stay law, meaning if you do time in the state of Florida, you pay your debt to society by remaining in debt for the rest of your life. Because of the pay-to-stay law, it costs somewhere on average in the neighborhood of about $50 a day to serve time in a Florida state prison, although I've seen it as high as $260 a day. They have a continental breakfast. So when you leave a Florida state prison, you're presented with a bill for the lousy meals, the cockroaches, the bed bugs, the cracked ceilings, and chipped paint. It's like checking out of a Trump hotel in Vegas. And there is no way you can pay it back. It's indentured servitude. Not only is it indentured servitude, you can't vote. Can't vote until you pay the state back, right? Florida voters said we should let ex-felons vote. So Republicans said, sure, right after they pay us the thousands of dollars they racked up for the privilege of going to prison because they're black. No trial, by the way. I mean, this is a bouillabaisse of constitutional violations. Right to a trial, right to vote, right to forbidding cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, as Bob Dole once said, where is the outrage? What I'm telling you is true. And black people in Florida know this is true. This should be reported every effing day in America. And this is why you're not allowed to teach critical race theory in the state of Florida. Now, yes, Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds on Tuesday won the nomination, the Republican nomination for governor of Florida. And he goes up against David Jolly, who's a former Republican congressman. David Jolly is now the Democratic nominee for governor. Byron Donalds, is black. Apparently, he doesn't have a mirror. He has repeatedly said there is no such thing as systemic racism in America. Do you know you're black, Byron Donalds? 2 years ago, Byron Donalds waxed nostalgic about the Jim Crow South, saying under Jim Crow, the black family, was much better off, way more stable than it became under the civil rights movement that eventually incentivized, he said, black fathers to leave their families. That is the Republican talking point, that the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 65 and equal housing somehow incentivized black fathers to abandon their children. How about the CIA dumping crack cocaine in the ghetto to fund the war against the Sandinistas? Does that play a role in it? Or we're not allowed to talk about that? Not allowed to talk about that. Well, Byron Donalds, waxing nostalgic about Jim Crow, saying there's no systemic racism in America. This is what a black Republican candidate has to say in Florida when black people can't vote. Very hard for black people to vote. Byron Donalds. Jesus. What is going on with him and Tim Scott? What is going on with those two? Well, in Florida's 25th congressional district, we saw, once again, the fissure inside the Democratic Party broken wide open after incumbent Democrat, the odious Jared Moskowitz, running in a newly redrawn district, beat down a challenger on the left, a card-carrying member of the DSA, Oliver Larkin. Moskowitz defeated Larkin by 30 percentage points. And Jared Moskowitz taught a master's class in how to destroy the Democratic Party and continues to teach this master's class. Moskowitz, it was the opposite of the race for Senate in Florida, because this time it was a total repudiation of the ascending left in this 25th congressional district, not so much a repudiation when Nixon beat Vindman. So Moskowitz is a bad guy. He's a really, 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 really bad guy. He's gained national attention taking on Trump and Trump cabinet officials. And he's good and funny exposing Republicans for their hypocrisy. What's the term? Fish in a barrel? I mean, really, exposing Republicans for their hypocrisy. Moskowitz remains weak on issues that support the working class and the poor. Moskowitz is despicable. Bad guy. Now, Angie Nixon, as I told you, she defeated Alex Vindman. And the first thing Vindman did was endorse Angie Nixon. The two could not be any more polar opposites inside the Democratic Party. The first thing Vindman did was endorse Angie Nixon because there's room in the party for liberals and the left. What there isn't room for is an opportunistic infection like Jared Moskowitz. Don't trust anybody from Florida with the first name Jared. Was the subway guy from Florida? He's despicable. Instead of accepting his victory graciously, Jared Moskowitz laid into the DSA. He singled out several DSA candidates who, because they've won the nominations in deep blue districts, they will win their general election. So we have about we're about to have seven, at the very least, seven card-carrying members of the DSA serving in Congress. And they're Democrats. And Jared Moskowitz said, after winning on Tuesday, they're anti-American at their core. This is a Democrat, Jared Moskowitz. He then went on to say he doesn't think it would be right to grant these DSA Congress members federal security clearances. He said they are national security threats. And then he tried to sabotage Dr. El Sayad's race in Michigan by attacking the wildly popular streamer Hassan Piker, who played a role in Dr. El Sayad's victory. Now, Piker is a socialist, and he's a vocal critic of Israel. He's a Muslim. He's also said some stupid things, like all of us have, and he's taken it back. He's also now being targeted by the Trump administration. It's not safe for Hassan Piker. He's a Muslim in America. Last year, he was detained for 2 hours by ICE at Chicago's O'Hare Airport. They demanded to know his opinion of Donald Trump. He's an American citizen. The Treasury Department has already demanded information on who funded a recent trip to Cuba. Jared Moskowitz, is running plays right off the Trump game plan. He's saying, I can't coexist with Hassan Piker or the DSA. You're supposed to ask for Oliver Larkin's support. You're supposed to say the Democratic Party is a big tent. Jared, you're supposed to say, I want pretty much the same things Oliver Larkin from the DSA wants. I just don't want to call it socialism. That's what you're supposed to say. Vindman endorsed Angie Nixon. Haley Stevens endorsed Dr. El Sayed. Jared Moskowitz wants to throw the DSA out, literally wants to throw the DSA out of the Democratic Party because we've been doing so well without the DSA, Jared. Jared Moskowitz didn't stop there. He said, Florida is known for hurricanes, and so the DSA is a disaster area in Florida, and there's no federal reimbursement coming to help these people. I guess that's supposed to be clever. It's funny. He seems funny when he goes after Trump. So Jared Moskowitz is parroting New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer, Democrat, who recently called the DSA a growing cancer made up of, quote, cop-hating anti-Americans who are not the real Democratic Party. You now have James Carville, Rahm Emanuel, the former chairman of the DNC, Jamie Harrison, in open rebellion against the DSA. Shame on you, Jared Moskowitz. Shame on you. They say, oh, we can't win if the DSA is part of our party. We can't win because you're in the party, Jared Moskowitz. I'm going to wrap it up. Corey Mills. We've been covering Corey Mills, who has been knocking women around and stalking them and threatening revenge porn, allegedly, and self-dealing. He's an arms manufacturer and a congressman. He lost his reelection bid. I want to just quickly go over a story about the polls because they're becoming problematic, and that's what Trump wants. If you want to steal the midterms, you have to contaminate the polls, because polls can tell us whether or not an election was stolen. So the polls told us the 2020 election wasn't stolen, and there's a movement afoot to make it so whenever the polls get something wrong, it becomes this big cause celeb. As an example, an outlier of how you can't trust the polls. One organization last week just admitted it was releasing phony polls on purpose to prove how easy it is to contaminate the polling averages. So this phony company helped skew the averages in last Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, the averages in the Democratic Party for Wisconsin governor, which turned out to be an upset with the polls at the time showing Francesca Hung, a Democratic socialist, winning by a landslide. She ended up losing to Crowley. So that's the big story. Some of these polls are fake and the averages are contaminated. They weren't contaminated. All you're hearing is, oh, the phony pollster. They got people believe him. The New York Times polling averages are meticulously maintained. They insist before being included in the averages that you have transparent methodology. The New York Times polling averages never fell prey to this phony polling operation. But all you're hearing is, look, phony polls. The polls, for the most part, doing their job. And remember, we need to trust the polls because Trump is going to claim voter fraud. And one of the most conclusive ways to prove election results are correct is by double-checking them with the polls. All right, I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. That was almost professional. If you want to leave a comment, if you want to correct me, go to davidfeldmanshow.com and you can contact me there. There's a contact button. If you want to host your own podcast, and somebody said, are you serious? Yes, I'm being totally serious. I work off notes and I give myself facts, some sentences. If you want my notes, go to davidfeldmanshow.com, hit show notes. That would be right. That would be the show notes. And you can download my notes, which I use, and then put it into your own language and host your own podcast or discussion group. So it's the show notes. If you want to read everything I read, go to my website and hit show prep. It's an updated feed of all my news sources. It's over at the David Feldman Show. Contact me. Hit the notification bell, please, so you always know when I'm going live. Share this episode, like this episode, subscribe to my newsletter, subscribe to my channel. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. My next live show is Sunday at 6:05 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining.